Well, good day, folks, and welcome back to the Secret Solve. This is the program where we look at the book, The Secret, and we try to figure out what's going on in these verses and images in the book. And since most people are focused on the front of the book, I like to look at the back of the book. So I'm going to start by talking about the appearance of the space shuttle in on page 175. And the reason I'm going to do this is because the space shuttle program ended up launching, um, and it's one of the things that happened right before the book came out. And so I think this one it can provide us the best or most information because at the time of the book, the only space shuttle that had been launched was actually Columbia. And so the Columbia was the first to be launched. And while the design process for this might date back to the 1960s, and it included General Dynamics, Lockheed, McDonnell Douglas, etc., and it goes back that far. And it got developed in '74 with the this uh, Rockwell began constructing the first orbiter, the QV 101, which would be later named the Enterprise. Uh, it rolled out on 1976 and was built for NASA as part of the Space Shuttle program to perform testing. But the image actually has the rocket fuel attached to it. So I think we're talking about an iteration. But if you like Edwards Air Force Base in California and the National Space Technology Lab in California, you can maybe use this appearance of the shuttle for that. And then also the fact that the shuttle landed at Edwards Air Force Base in California, then there might be some additional information to be garnered from that. Um, so I don't know. I think there's something in this image because, first of all, you have the image of the space shuttle. And so it's definitely in the image. And you got the guys with the ears, with the fingers in the ears. So to me, that means you're talking about the launch. And the landing doesn't actually have the solid rocket fuel boosters that would be required in this. And so just going and jumping off at this particular point, I want to talk a little bit about Merritt Island, Florida, because I think this is the Cape Canaveral area, etc. But before I do that, let me go back to the image again, uh, because if you look at the image, you get down here and you see this strange looking flower, if you will, and my finger's pointing to it. And so let's say stylistically that Pirard was supposed to draw the puzzle for Florida. And he did this. Well, that's a banana tree. And if that's a banana tree, and you go to Merritt Island, Cape Canaveral, Florida, you'll find out that um, what the actual waterway between Port Canaveral, Cape Canaveral, if you will, the waterway is called the Banana River. And so stylistically, if this image is anything about the actual dig site or dig area, you have basically an appearance of the place on which it was launched. And then you would have that banana. Those are bananas. Those are bunches of bananas. Okay. Now, if you start looking at this area, what's interesting is that there's Audubon. And all these images have birds, 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 birds. Birds seem to be a central focus of of the idea. And so if you're looking at this as like in the background, you have on the launch pad the Columbia, and then in front of that, you would have the um, Banana River represented by this. And then on the other side, you have the Indian River. Well, what if this image that was done by, I think, Perard, what if this is supposed to be the backup image? It could put you at a solved location either in Kings Park, next to the Audubon, or uh, just anywhere in this very close proximity to the Kennedy Space Center. And in 1980, I don't know how many of these areas were uh, able to be gone to because of the base and everything. But I know my next door neighbors actually went and watched the Challenger disaster. In other words, they were actually there when the Challenger blew up. And so, depending upon how far and how accessible these areas are, you're talking about Kelly Park, uh, the Diana Shores. And I'm wondering if Diana Shore is in the back of the book, just right out of the name on the place here. I just wonder if it's on there. Uh, but with the Banana River, the Indian River, maybe this Indian in this water, this rock in water, is telling you that you need to look at an isthmus or maybe a peninsula, or heaven forbid, an island. A just flat out island is what you should be looking for, because you have a rock sitting in water in the main image of the drawing by Palancar. But in the Perard drawing, you merely have a few guys sitting on a little water place, or a little place without water. Then you have in the background the space shuttle, and in between you have the bananas are right there. And so I don't want to go real far with this, but I do want to give you the information I put together. So the Merritt Island, is 50 miles east of Orlando. Okay, there are a lot of references to the back of the book that have to deal with Disney, have to deal with home rule, have to do with what you could put in Orlando as a solve. Uh, and the old Florida is represented by the huge wildlife refuge on the northern part of the island. So maybe you can actually explain the image that um, was done by Palancar as representing the huge wildlife refuge that used to be on the island. And maybe the fact that these animals were distorted or don't look quite right is because the fact that they're being encroached upon by the program to buy up all of the area around Merritt Island and make it into a military, well, not a military, but a space facility. And uh, the other thing is that there is a part of the eastern shore south of Oak Hill is that section of the Indian River, a lagoon known as Mosquito Lagoon. Now, nobody has explained the bugs, and I'm just going to go back to an image that's before this one. And you have this particular image right here, and it's in the books stylistically one page before you get to the next one. And this one, if you kind of look at it a little bit, you've got the guy that is this a mosquito? But you have in the background a a little island, if you will, a little rock or a little island. It's all surrounded by water, and then you've got this grass growing up in the Dixie Pixie. And while I've been trying to put the Dixie Pixie, obviously, in with something that would be more akin to um, the other solve, it could be evidence of this idea in Cape Canaveral. Um, I don't know what the history of possibly a fire or this, this corncob pipe. Uh, and the dynamite obviously is DuPont, invented dynamite and that. Well, anyway, back to that. Uh, so you've got the barrier islands. Uh, the Sykes Creek flows southward. You've got Douglas Dummit. So if the guy in the pipe in this image is supposed to tell you to look for a Douglas, because Douglas MacArthur famously, is the guy that spoke to pipe. And if you're supposed to relate that to Douglas Dummit, then, possibly you've got a reason why he might be in that image. So there was this problem with the canoes being moved from one side of the island. There was a Dummit Castle. But if you really, really want, George, this is directed at you. If you really want a landmark specific relationship to Spain, why not talk about the Duke of Lucia? The Duke of Casalucia. Uh, uh, you know, um, but he wasn't actually from Spain. He was an Italian nobleman. But anyway, the Duke comes over here and he builds a castle. And most rooms in this castle were octagonal, by the way. And they thought this would stand up better. All right. Well, anyway, he was rumored to marry a Budweiser heiress, but then some people said no. He married a Cornwall. And I don't know how many times the back of the book mentions a Cornwall. And I've always thought maybe this Cornwall was the Corn Palace in like the Dakotas or something. But I haven't. Maybe they're referring to the actual Cornwall that this lady is, and maybe they were referring to this Cornwall when they're talking Cornwall, Cornwall, Cornwall. And now that I've thought about this a little bit, I've tried to look at some of these images and see if I can find an orange in it, because this is basically the Orange River area, and I don't know if there's any that we could get out of this image that would get you to an orange grove or anything like this. But I definitely like the animal thing because it was pretty much, an animal sanctuary. All right. So there was a canal in the Indian River. You had the Mosquito Lagoon. Then they start building all these bridges. And the center of Merritt Island was first connected to the mainland at Cocoa or Cocoa. Cocoa. And I don't know if there's any chocolate mentioned in the book or cocoa or anything like that. But this whole Banana River, Cocoa Beach, Merritt Island idea is starting to wear on me a little bit. There's the Margaret and Danny Strickland Park that was been built in this area. And there's a Minuteman Causeway. One of the famous places here was Mather's Bridge. It was a former lodging building by Lloyd Barrett. And again, I'm just mentioning things. There was a Mather's Bridge restaurant, and a drawbridge over the Haulover Canal was built in 1933. It gave a land route from Merritt Island to Oak Hill and New Smyrna Beach and Daytona Beach. There's an old church here. There's a cemetery with names in it. So the Space Age story begins, and this is the meat and the bones. Meat and the bones. The history on Port Canaveral was opened in 1953. The 12-foot deep canal was constructed from the Banana River on the Indian River across Merritt Island. Okay, Well, there's this thing called the Bumper 8 launch from Cape Canaveral. Bumper 8. So Bumper 8 is some testing, the first testing. And in the background of the Bumper 8 image that I have, I've seen a rocket that's being tested. Uh, and it's got this platform type of thing where there's a bunch of stairs where you would walk up to the rocket before it was launched. And I'm looking at the pole on that and how a rocket was tethered to the pole in order to test the flight. And then I go back and look at this image and I see you've got, in the background here, you've got this rock, you've got this pole. And if you look closely at the image itself, you actually have something that's in the shadow attached to the pole in the actual image itself. And then I don't know if that reflection in the water is actually the space shuttle below it. But in the reflection of the water, you've got what can be an appearance of the space shuttle itself. So I don't know. This has been kind of weighing on me why the Perard drawing in the back is put together the way that it is. But you definitely would need a tower. So this land purchase, in order to make the Kennedy Space Center, we don't need to mention how many times Kennedy was there, but let's just say that you want to look at the Brevard National Wildlife Refuge that used to exist. And if you want to look at the Wisconsin Village that used to exist adjacent to the community of Orsino and Wilson and Courtney and Audubon and Indianola. They already had the guided missile testing base restricted area in my image is called 1C. And it was the only thing that was there at the time. And that area is basically right where Cape Canaveral is. But on the other side of that is Audubon. And then another city was Angel City. City of Angels, Angel City is Los Angeles. And so maybe if the city they're referring to is actually this Angel City and Cocoa Beach. And then there's some more pictures of the land acquisition that took place. So in the end, basically, you've got Shiloh to the north, then you've got Allenhurst, Clifton, Wilson, Heath, Orsino, Courtenay, Audubon, Indianola, Horty, Merritt, Georgiana, Lotus, and Tropic. And that's what the towns of Merritt Island used to be. And so all of those, towns were basically abandoned and taken over. And so the population of Brevard County in 1960 was just over 100,000 people. And most of them lived in Titusville, Cocoa, and Melbourne. By 1970, it had already doubled in the 10 years. But east side of Sykes Creek is a large wetland area that has become a bird preserve and is known as the Ulamay Wildlife Sanctuary. So you've got a Hubert Humphrey Bridge that opened in 1968. And you have the Merritt Square Mall that opened in 1970 with J.C. Penney, Ivy's, and Jordan Marsh. So the reason I mention this is they, in the book when they talk about this Toronto ogre, the Toronto ogre, they talk about the expansion of malls, and this happened everywhere across the United States. But I haven't been able to specifically use this in any of the puzzles that would be adjacent to a location where there's an actual cask. So what happened is there was personnel cuts that came about in the Merritt Island Depression after the moon landing. After Apollo 11 landed on July 20th, there were a total of 6 manned moon landings between 69 and 72. So the challenge put out by the president had been met, and the employment at Merritt Island went from 23,000 to 500 to around 16,000. The former aerospace engineer, here's the story. Former aerospace engineers and technicians were lucky to find jobs delivering pizza or working in convenience stores. Many of them left the area because they couldn't make their house payments. So you've got this guy with the corncob pipes, and both of them, look like they're JPL. They're engineers. They got pens in their pocket, by God, you know. And so, but they've got pens in their pocket. I mean, uh, it just looks to me like maybe they're telling the story of what happened here at Merritt Island and the pullback of the space program. South Merritt Island has a place called Honeymoon Hill. That could be the relationship with the unhoneymoon hill. So anyway, then they go back and they start building up business with the shuttle program. But that bumper thing is important for me because on all of the pictures of automobiles in the back of the book, you have one of them that just shows the bumper and the front end of the car. You have another one that shows the front end of the car driving into something. And so, and then the other one with the guy that's the teen angel, he's right in front of the bumper. He's pointing at the frickin' Dagmar. But in that picture, you've got the Kaiser emblem in the center of the car, but it's a stylistic Kaiser emblem because it almost looks like the space shuttle in a way. A lot of people died in the space program, from test flights and all that kind of thing. I won't really get into that, but all I'm getting at is if you look at these images and you look at the ones with a vehicle in them, they're all focusing on the bumper. American Motors Gremlins, you've got the bumper, if you will. Okay. All right. I think I'm done talking about. Oh, and then there used to be a landmark at the extreme southern tip of Merritt Island called the Dragon Point. And it's basically a creature that it doesn't really look like the image figure looking up at the air. So I'm not going to go into that. All right. So there's this Duchess of Castelluccia, which actually ends up being Jenny A. Cornwall, daughter of John Cornwall of New York. And this was the Florida Indian River Duchess. And I don't know how far you can go with her. One falsity is that she was the daughter of Anheuser-Busch, but they later found out that wasn't actually the case. So the RTV-G4 bumper was a sounding rocket. A sounding rocket, or a rocketsondi, sometimes called a research rocket. So that might be why the fingers are in the ears of this guy in the parade drawing on 175, is because this was a quote unquote a sounding rocket. I'm just reading from Wikipedia. I'm at Wikipedia. I'm looking at an RTV-G. Oh, a TV! A TV-G. Like as in the TV rating of a G. Anyway, so 6 of the first flights were conducted at White Sands Missile Range. And the first rocket launched from Cape Canaveral on July 24th of 1950. So here's your Cape Canaveral uh, Bumper 5. And, I'm not so sure that you can't find a Bumper 5 looking rocket in one of these things. Because, in fact, if you go back to the Indian looking at the sky and you look at the bird right behind his nose and you look at the dark area that the bird's looking at, I honestly think that is a RTV-G-4 bumper. I believe that's a bumper rocket sitting in there that the bird is looking at. So the bird's a little pissed off because it used to have a peaceful, quiet habitat, and now it's having to deal with a freaking rocket being launched. If you start looking at the image and you start looking at it closely, directly below the little jewel, let's say you've now you can start seeing the triangular shaped pointed parts in the image when you start thinking rocketry. And there's one right here almost where the chin is. And if you move back to the center of the figure, you've got the top part of a rocket in there. Then when you move over to below the chin, now that you're thinking rocket shapes, you have another rocket with a slash through it, if you will. And if you go stylistically and look at the Bumper 5 that was launched, the rocket had this line down the side of it, if you will. And so, if that line that's down the side of it is stylistically supposed to match the drawing that Palancar put together, he could again be showing you another rocket in those rocks as well. And then I found the space shuttle finally. I found the space shuttle in the image. So now that I started looking for the space shuttle, I actually found it. So if you look at where the pole is that's holding something to launch, and maybe that helmet at the top of the guy has been a spacesuit helmet all along. And we've just not been seeing it that way because we've had our head in the ground in another part of Florida. And they were giving us exactly what we needed to see in this image. And now that I'm starting to look for rockets, I'm looking at the front leg of the guy on the horse. And I see that there's a rocket in that front leg. There's also another rocket in the fold of the horse's mane appearance. But the space shuttle, I can actually see the space shuttle. If you take the nose and go directly back towards the image figure, the outline of the front of the space shuttle image is in that, basically where that bird is, and it starts and it goes up from there. If you look at the lighter background, well, anyway, just start looking for rockets in here. And you'll start seeing them because they're here. Okay, so go look at, you can look up the information on the bumper program, but this was the first one that was launched at Cape Canaveral. If you like the Jet Propulsion Lab, they were the ones that did the testing theoretically for this. The White Sands Proving Grounds was where they launched the first ones. But look at the tower. See, these things were launched from these old rickety towers, if you will. If you look at the launch of the V2 bumper, you have a post, and then you have this building. Like there was just one building on the rock, if you will. Okay, so uh, where does this take you to? Well, I don't know. I looked at the Hughes H4 Hercules, and this is the Spruce Goose made by the Hughes Aircraft Company. I'm not suggesting that this belongs with this particular image, but if it could go somewhere because the aircraft was the brainchild of Henry J. Kaiser, a leading Liberty shipbuilder and manufacturer. Uh, and this gets into the whole, where do you put the Kaiser car? Do you put it back in Michigan, the Kaiser car, or do you put that Kaiser car, the Kaiser aluminum stuff, do you put that here? Or do you put that just with Hercules? Um, we talked about the space shuttle, uh, Cape Canaveral. Okay, so I've got another thing I want to kind of talk about, and that's the Crisafulli Tower. So if I was going to go try to formulate my solve for this particular area, I think I would want to include in it the Crisafulli Tower. And if you go to Audubon, Florida, take it to the 982, cars park, and you take the highway up to TISTEF. And that's going to be Crisafulli Lane Road. You can go to this Crisafulli Tower, and you can get a picture of it as a historical landmark, but I haven't been able to get very much information on why it's important and why it's a historical landmark. And if somebody can put in the information, this would be helpful to me greatly. But the fact that Gleason Landscaping Nursery is close to here is great, because I think that in the Perard image, the face of the guy with the tie looks like Jackie Gleason from the Honeymooners. Okay, well, I doubt that this has been Gleason Landscape and Nursery, but it was sitting there. But an interesting feature is Duck Point is up in this general area. And then if you look at the swamp, it kind of looks like that flag up by Duck Point. But anyway, and we like golf courses. And there's a Savannah Golf Club here, and there's a Dolphin Park. So those are always good to find. But there's another few things down here that one of the schools, they ended up naming it they ended up naming one of the schools down here what was it, the fountain I was talking about out in San Francisco. It actually does exist. One of the schools down here is named after Louis Stevenson. So it just gets better from there. Okay, so that's one of the things in the back of the book that's always bothered me is oh look, the Blue Origin rocket factory is now right down here, and the Neil Armstrong operations checkout, and there's a whole bunch of stuff about Neil Armstrong in the back of it. But the Banana River being in front of the launch pad, and then finding Jackie Gleason, and then the fire. There has to be something that burned up on the launch pad or something, because there has to be a fire that has happened in this area somewhere. But the corn pipe might actually just point out this Cornwall lady and her husband, who was the Duke. Maybe that's what the corn pipe is all about, is just to get you to there. But there's a Winn-Dixie if you're hungry, and maybe that's the Dixie. Maybe Winn-Dixie Stores is just your Dixie connection. All right, so now we're going to move into other stuff. that I just can't explain. But remember, bumpers, I can't explain Little Richard. So Richard Wayne Penniman appears in the back of the book. Where does he appear? He's the inner genie. So the story about the inner genie, the Conatus, the Conatus. And remember, there was back in the time, there was this, the Coneheads was a movie. Coneheads was a movie. I see a Conehead in this one image where this guy is spinning the plate. He's actually a Conehead. And I think there's more to be researched on Coneheads. And this show may go on for hours, honestly. By the time I get through these things, I just don't understand. But so if you go Google Little Richard, you'll find out that he wore this outfit that looks like the one that he has on in the inner genie thing, and where he's putting the. So now that I look at the gas nozzle that's pointing here into the fuel tank, that could be a fuel rocket booster, if you will. It doesn't actually look correct. It's kind of got more like a rocket type of impression. But anyway, I'm sure there was some photoshopping that went on with these images. Because so anyway, you got this guy that's dressed like Little Richard, in my opinion. And Caldonia has to do with him. Princess Lavon. He was in the King Brothers Circus. Well, if you like the Kings, there's a lot of references to that island. If you like the Wright brothers, he performed with Billy Wright on stage. He was in the Tijuana Club in New Orleans and at Club Matinee in Houston. Oh, you guys. Well, anyway, I don't know. Long Tall Sally was his first hit. Long Tom, Chuck Berry. I'm just trying to find what is, I'm pretty sure that this is who the guy is. Shortly after the release of Tutti Frutti, Richard relocated to Los Angeles. After achieving success as a recording artist and a live performer, Richard moved into a wealthy, formerly predominant white neighborhood, living close to black celebrities such as boxer Joe Louis. There's your St. Louis. His first album, Here's Little Richard. Then he did some secular music, did some stuff with some other people, Jimi Hendrix, Reprise Records. He abused his drugs a little bit. But the thing, so the thing I want to point out about Little Richard, he does have a little bit of and his real name is Richard Wayne Penniman, by the way, born in Macon, Georgia. His father was a deacon and a brick mason. So I like those two aspects because we've always got brick masons and religious people. And he bootlegger, moonshine. And he owned the nightclub called the Tip Inn. Possibly as a complication from birth, he had a slight deformity that left one of his legs shorter than the other. This produced an unusual gait, and so he might have been limping. He was also mocked for having an effeminate appearance. Well, we've already met Rudy Valentino that had the same problem. Okay, so Little Richard, before he entered the 10th grade, he left his family home and joined Hudson's Medicine Show in 1949, performing Louis Jordan's Caldonia. Richard stated that his piano style was greatly influenced by Ike Turner's piano intro on Rocket 88. Rocket 88? Anybody? Uh, okay, his father died. So, disillusioned by the record business, Tutti Frutti returned to Macon in 1954. He settled for work as a dishwasher for a Greyhound bus line. The back of the book does have some mention of the guy that owned Greyhound bus lines, and he did indeed own Greyhound bus lines, and he's mentioned by name in the back of the book. Um, so he then got hooked up with some records. But the thing about old Tutti Frutti is uh, in Macon, Little Richard was arrested for voyeurism when he was watching a couple having sex in a car at a gas station. Look at the look at the voyeurism again. He's not watching the car. He's a little upside down. He's a little excited about it. Okay, so uh, that was. Well, I think there's something in there about Little Richard. Uh, James Arthur Baldwin. Anybody who grew up in the 1970s and 60s knew the name James Arthur or James Baldwin. Uh, so he is basically an essay novelist, playwright. His first novel, Go Tell the Mountain, was published in '53. Uh, it's considered to be one of Time Magazine's 100 best English language novels. Uh, he writes about sexuality, race, masculinity, and class warfare. Uh, he was involved in civil rights and gay liberation. Okay, so Baldwin was born as James Arthur Jones to Emma Beardis Jones in 24 at Harlem Hospital. He was born out of wedlock. Jones never revealed to Baldwin who his biological father was. Uh, According to Anna Malika Tubbs in her account of the mothers of prominent civil rights figures, some rumors stated that his father suffered from drug addiction or that he died, but in any case, he undertook it. His mom was a single mom. A native of Deal Island, Maryland. So I don't know if this guy is in the back of the book or not, but based upon the number of bald people in the book, why not? Harry Belafonte. If Harry Belafonte's somehow not related to the back of the book, and I'm just giving you alternative people for the inner genie, I actually think it's Little Richard, but it could be Harry Belafonte. I'm just coming up with basically this section is, who is the inner genie? Who is the figure on 157? Who are they making fun of? And my best shot on this is old Tutti Frutti, Rudy, because of the fact that he had that voyeurism thing with the car. But Harry Belafonte was born Harold George Belafonte Jr. He's a singer. If you haven't heard the name Harry Belafonte, anyway, I'm giving it to you now. He was born to Harold George Belafonte at Lying In Hospital in Harlem, son of Jamaican-born parents. Remember in Boston, we had the Jamaica Plain, and that's where Andy Capullo grew up. We had the sugar bag. We had references to sugar, cane sugar. In the image, there was cane. There's exploding sugar bag. Anyway, all of those things work out for this guy. He worked as a chef. Well, on the front of the book, we have the James Beard and um, what's her name? The French one. Anyway, we have the two chefs mentioned. Uh, and Melvin Love was his mother, and she was a housekeeper. Uh, his mother was a child of a Scottish Jamaican mother and an African American father. Uh, uh, his mother was a Dutch Jewish, no, father was a Dutch Jewish father of a Sephardic Jewish descent. He was raised Catholic, however. So we got another Jewish person, maybe the only black Jew we could find for the book. But he was in the Navy, so that always helps out. Uh, the other one that we might want to talk about is Sidney Poitier. I don't think the Energini's Sidney Poitier, but it could be. Uh, well, anyway, he had some songs and stuff, and trying to pin down where he actually sang or anything that was important there probably isn't going to get you anywhere. He was politically active. Civil rights was what he was at. He helped organize the 1963 March on Washington, where King had the famous speech, "I have a dream." Uh, so there's all of anything that you have to do with that. He was a protege and somebody who was contacted by James Baldwin. He was active in Kennedy's election. And then, you know, he lived a long life. So he has things that go on up until way past the time that the book was written. Uh, so anyway, Belafonte married Marguerite Bird. Found another bird. They had two daughters. They're not important because the birds. He lived in Washington Heights, Manhattan, East Elmhurst, Queens. So Belafonte had an affair with actress Joan Collins during the filming of Island in the Sun. Always like that. He married his second wife, Julie Robinson, a former dancer with the Catherine Dunham Company. I had some. Okay. We've had fun with Harry Belafonte. I just want to say, daylight come and me want to go home. All right, what else we got? Oh, might as well talk about the Hughes Company. So we talked about the Hughes H4. There's a picture in the back of the book that just bothers the hell out of me. And it's the one that has the giant walking around. And one of the giants just so much reminds us it's the Chicago World's Ferry. The giant in the Chicago World's Ferry just worries the hell out of me because I'm trying to figure out if this is this Lou Ferrigno? Is this Louis Jude Ferrigno Sr., an American actor, professional bodybuilder, or is this the governor of California himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger? I don't know. He appeared as the Incredible Hulk in 1977 on the TV show. Also appearing in that show was a Bixby character. But he was born in Brooklyn. His dad was a police lieutenant. He's an Italian. He had ear infections. And he lost 75 to 80% of his hearing. But nobody knew that he had this, and he was considered to be, he was bullied because they thought he was a deaf and a mute. And I don't know if I put him in with the Catalina puzzle of the C and the I, and I don't even know if this works out. But he was the first, there's a thing called the Mr. Olympia, and him and Schwarzenegger both competed in this bodybuilding. And, you know, If this does not have a direct reference to some sort of bodybuilding, um, I would be surprised. But I don't know. So my two bodybuilders that's always bothered me from the back of the book, on page 171, have been uh, broken down to Ferrigno and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Arnold Alois Schwarzenegger is an Austrian. He basically competed in the Mr. Universe, the film Pumping Iron. But early life, he's the second son of Gustav uh, and his wife Ariella. Uh, and Gustav was the local chief of police. Why are all these bodybuilders offsprings of police? Well, anyway, he joined the Nazi Party. Uh, Siege of Leningrad, a few things like that happened. So, uh, let's see. So, but I believe he had a brother or a twin brother, and his twin brother like died in a car accident. So his brother like died in a car accident. Um, where's that part of that story out as? I don't think he went to his. I don't think he went to that funeral. Here it is. Schwarzenegger's brother Meinhard died in a car crash in 1971. He was driving drunk and died instantly. Schwarzenegger did not attend his funeral. Meinhard was engaged to Erika Knapp, and they had a 3-year-old son named Patrick. Schwarzenegger paid for Patrick's education and helped him move to the U.S. So there's the story about his brother dying in a drunk driving crash. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that's in there, but he was Mr. Olympus in 1970, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, and again in 1980. Again, I've not, and nobody else has explained the Chicago World's Fair and bodybuilding or anything like that. But if you look at the chin of the guy in the World's Fair, you can see the tunnel of love, most definitely. It's outlined in there. Okay, what else do I have? Okay, so now we get into some things about the lines in the book that's in the verses. And I'm going to first start with friendship we now extend. So in the ritual of the Loyal Order of the Moose, there's a prayer and then the joining and the singing of friendship we now extend. And there's a lyric in the back of the book that has about the bar extending, and then the other one is the by the times. Well, these are actually two lyrics from the friendship we now extend and the tie that binds from the Royal Order of Moose. And I don't know if what's his name was a member of the Moose and it came from that. But the Loyal Order of Moose is always, and if you look at one of these drawings, pictures, the hair looks actually like a rack from a moose antler. I can't remember where I put that one, but I'd seen this before somewhere. And that's how I got into this Loyal Order of the Moose. But anyway, so it was founded in Louisville, Kentucky, by Dr. John Henry Wilson. I love it when we can find a doctor. Well, there's this ritual. Where at 9 o'clock, An important ritual of the moose is the 9 o'clock ceremony. At 9 o'clock, all moose are directed to face toward Moose Heart with bowed heads and folded arms and repeat a silent prayer. Let the little children come unto me. Do not keep them away, for they are like the kingdom of heaven. God bless Moose Heart. At the same time, the children of Moose Heart kneel at their bedside in prayers as well. There are also the 10,000 shouts. These begin with, "Thou shalt believe in God and worship Him as the conscience dictates. Thou shalt be tolerant to let others worship each in his own way. Other thou shalt pertain to patriotism, service of fellowment, protection of the weak, avoidance of slander to a brother of moose, love of the loyal order of moose, faithfulness and humility." So this guy by the name of James Davis drew up the rituals. So the guard then asked the sergeant to administer the obligation, and during the ceremony, after the 10,000 shouts are explained, the governor grasps the hands of the candidates while the members sing, "Blessed be the tie that binds." Finally, the governor administers the second part of the obligation. The candidate promises to support Moose Heart. And then they do another prayer at the altar, and then they join in singing, "Friendship we now extend." So in just a single ceremony, the moose, you can get the two lyrics or the two things. Well, why are the moose important? Because both Franklin Roosevelt, who is spewed about in the back of the book, was a member of New York City Lodge 15, and Theodore Roosevelt, the 39th president, was also a moose, and so was Warren G. Harding. And Thomas Harry S. Truman. Excuse me, Harry S. Truman. Another famous moose is Charlie Chaplin, if you like L.A. Ernest Borgnine. We haven't talked about the big schnoz of Ernest Borgnine, but he might be in here. Lou Costello. Ed Beard is in South Norfolk. Larry Bird, Basketball Hall of Famer. He was pretty important back in the day. Well, anyway, you can look at Arnie Palmer, Gale Sayers, Barry Sims. A lot of people you might not have thought of. Henry Ford, inventor of the mass-produced automobile in Detroit, Michigan, Lodge number 160. Eugene Cernan, astronaut, the last man on the moon. Oh, boom! Eugene Cernan. Eugene Cernan is also one of the two people that were commanders on the first space shuttle launch. And he was born in Chicago, Illinois. He's a Czech and a Slavic. He was in the Navy, of course. Gemini. He was on a Gemini. He was on Apollo 7, Apollo 17, and I'm pretty sure he was the last man on the moon. Well, maybe not. Let me look up who was on Columbia, because I thought they credited that guy as being the last. Oh no, I want to look at Columbia Space Shuttle crew. Oh, am I actually doing Columbia? Oh no, Columbia is the one that blew up on re-entry. What's the first one? Okay, first space shuttle crew. crew. Oh, okay, so it was John W. Young and Robert L. Crippen. But I thought this guy was also the last one to go on the moon. So the thing about, okay, so I forgot to leave this out about STS-1. So STS-1 actually launched, and this was Columbia, and there was only 2 in this mission, but the Apollo-Soyuz, this one launched 20 years after the first split. It was timed to launch exactly 20 years after the first flight into space by the Russians. So I guess he wasn't the last guy to walk on the moon. Okay, it doesn't matter because we're just doing a free for all right here. So I talked about the moose and Ferrigno, Belafonte, etc. Listening. Well, good. Somebody's listening. I just checked to see if anybody's going along. I'll come back if you want to type in something we should look up. So now at this point in the show, I went through all of the things that I didn't go through the Love Boat and Fred Grandy. I don't know if I could find Gopher from the Love Boat in the back of the book or anybody that was on the Love Boat. But I'm developing a solve idea based upon Howard Hughes and Howard Hughes's Spruce Goose, and trying to figure out if I take where the actual place where the Catalina Island tour charter launches from is in Long Beach. And Long Beach hosted like the first Comic-Con, official Comic-Con on the West Coast. And somebody like Byron dating a California girl might have went out to Comic-Con. I think he might have been there. And so I'm developing a solve idea that goes along with the Natalie Wood story, but takes it back to where you would launch to go to Catalina Island. Anyway, yeah, Julia Child is the one I was trying to think of. Oh, let's look up Sammy Davis Jr. Are we trying to develop a solve for Las Vegas where we use Howard Hughes, we use Sammy Davis, we use Dean Martin, we use the Rat Pack? Is there a rat in any of these images where we can actually get a good solve going for lost wages? I think Las Vegas could be a puzzle. Honestly, I think it could, but I'm not sure which one I'd put there. But let's click on another link and let's look up Sammy Davis. They usually have to be Jewish and from Russia. But old Sammy, what do we got about old Sammy Davis? Oh, I like Sammy Davis because at the age of 29, he lost his left eye in a car accident. So whenever somebody loses an eye, has a car accident, because there's a car accident in the back of the book, you'd see it. There's somebody running into a car. Who is it? We just have to figure out who it is that ran into that damn car. You know, is it Schwarzenegger's brother? Is it Sammy Davis losing an eye? I guess the inner genie could be this guy. So yeah, thank you for bringing this up because now I can give you this quote. Davis' popularity helped break the race barrier of segmented entertainment industry. He did, however, have a complex relationship with the black community and drew criticism after publicly supporting Richard Nixon in '72. We see Nixon holding the peace sign up under that balloon. One day on a golf course with Jack Benny, he was asked what his handicap was. And he replied, handicap? Talk about handicap. I'm a one-eyed Negro who's Jewish. This was to become a signature comment recounted in his autobiography and in many articles. He reunited with Sinatra and Dean Martin. Well, that happened in '87. Too bad. He died in death, but that's too late. So he's from Harlem. Okay, honestly, I'm just going to say it right now. I'm wondering if Byron brought in Overton Lloyd to hide a cask in Harlem because he didn't have the balls to do it himself. I'm just wondering if he did this because I have not found the touching of Overton Lloyd's handprint on the secret yet. I've been looking for it, and I don't want to use the racial aspect to be the link. I'm trying to use the music aspect, and I'm just bottom line trying to figure out what Overton Lloyd did for the secret. So Davis was born in Harlem. His father was a tap dancer. His mother was a stage performer. Oh, his mother was Puerto Rican and born in San Juan. Maybe this is the Don Juan. Davis's mother was born in New York to Cuban parents who were Afro-Cuban background. Well, this brings in your Cuban stuff. Would be another link to my solve that has to do with the fort or with the Worth Monument and the fact that Worth was offered money to invade Cuba and falls into that line of thinking. So I don't know. Could be Sammy Davis. He was in the Army at 18. I must have a knockdown, drag-out fight every 2 days. His nose was broken numerous times and permanently flattened. At one point, he was offered a beer laced with urine. I guess he was abused by the other soldiers from the South. Okay, well, we know Sammy Davis, Las Vegas. He nearly died in an automobile accident in November of '54 in San Bernardino. He was making a return trip from LA to LA from Las Vegas. So I don't know. The accident occurred at a fork on Route 66 at Cajon Boulevard and Kendall Drive. He did drive into the car. He left his eye. He lost that eye due to the bullet-shaped horn button. Well, I've always seen a bullet or a torpedo or something in one of those images. Later, Davis was fitted for a glass eye, which he wore the rest of his life. Fortress North, cold as glass. Oh, sorry, Sammy. I was just sitting there. I couldn't help it. So he was involved with actress Kim Novak. Oh, he had a relationship with Nichelle Nichols. Okay, so in case you people that aren't Star Trek fans, Nichelle Nichols is the Uhura character in Star Trek. This would be right up. This would be right up the line of Byron Preiss to include somebody from that genre. But I think she may have something better for us, actually, because not only was she in Star Trek, she was the ambassador. She was the ambassador for NASA. From 1977 to 2015, she volunteered her time to promote NASA's programs and recruit diverse astronauts, including some of the first female and ethnic minority astronauts. So maybe Grace Dell Nichols has more to do with the story than I first originally might have assumed. And so, in the spirit of trying to find that connection, uh, her career started in Chicago, and she was toured Canada with Duke Ellington and Lionel Hampton. And her acting break was an appearance in the Kicks and Co. Oscar Brown's show. She attracted the attention of Hugh Hefner. Well, we haven't talked about Hugh Hefner yet, but I don't know. I just think Hugh Hefner could have maybe something to do with this, but I don't know. All right. So there's our Nichelle Nichols and her link to Sammy Davis. Uh, in '60, there was another racially charged public controversy when Davis married a Swedish-born actress, May Britt. Well, that would always be pretty interesting for the back of the book. Uh, oh, the camera. Davis used a medium format camera later to capture images. So his Davis was an avid photographer and enjoyed shooting pictures of family and acquaintances. So maybe the camera's in the back of the book for Sammy Davis Jr. Okay, well, there's that guy. Nichelle Nichols, Sammy Davis. What else do we got? All right, so now I'm just going to go do the free-for-all. So I mentioned in my earlier video today about the book and how nobody's explained the pizza in the one image that they claim to be in one location. Nobody is, in the first image, nobody has explained why the hands look to be doing either sign language for Lou Ferrigno and for some other people, Helen Keller. Nobody's explained why there's a C and an I. Nobody's explained why the two C's, the two claws, are in what looks to be like Catalina Island. This rose could mean Pasadena. I don't know. There's some unexplained phenomena in the very first image that would work better with Catalina Island. The round table makes sense if you go to Avalon and you use Avalon as Catalina. There are so many things in the solve for for this one with the lion and the death mask that nobody has explained the bulging pear, why they would put a home plate with softball eyes and teeth that match Copp's Hill, a daisy that matches the piers at the east end, the exploding pear, anyway, nobody explains any of these things when they go to tell you that this is, oh, it's got a black figure in it, and it must be about slavery, and the place that the most slaves were brought to the United States is this place. But nobody uses anything in this image to explain that. Is that where they brought all the lions to the Americas? Really? Is that where all the lions came in too? Yeah, okay. You guys, why is the eyeball shaped like a football? What does that have to do with your solve? That is at that what, Charleston? Is that where you think it's at? Okay, the next one with the exploding belly. How do you get any of this military gold? How do you get any of this exploding guts? How do you get any of this to reference the place you're pointing it to? None of it. You don't explain. People don't explain how anything in the image matches the solves on 12 Treasures. They got the soul. They give you this little thing, and they show you 4 or 5 things. But explain every detail and make it work for your solve area. If you can't explain all the details, you're in the wrong place. So in the Cleveland image, nobody explained why the Asmat tribe face was in there. Nobody explained why the horse was broken into pieces. Nobody explained in that solve why the image figure is suffering from propecia. Uh, so I think there's some unexplained. Nobody's explained the 1442 and the 1881 uh, sufficiently, to my opinion, uh, as to how that worked for you. So there's some unexplained things in that image that I'd like for you to address, um, especially the Asmat guy and the Propecia. Okay, so in the next one that they say was in Chicago, and I kind of agree with it, but I think it has to do more with Andrew Jackson than it has to do with a seat at Lincoln. Lincoln did not have glasses. He died too soon. Lincoln did not suffer from smallpox. Lincoln did not get in an altercation. Stylistically, the circle, why is that stylistically look like an A over here? They don't explain the blue roofs. What they do explain is the Bowman. I'll agree. Yep, it's sitting there at that general location. The water tower, yep, looks like the building. I can agree. But the wind, the fountain with the lady pouring the water, yep, see that. Cotton bowls, explain that to me. The loop, I can see the loop, but why is there a big ear and why is there a lady's garment on the top of this guy? Explain that to me. Explain it to me. Explain how any of that. What in your Chicago solve? What does any of that work? With what? Where? I talked about my new ideas for Florida. That the space helmet is merely a space helmet. If you look in the image, you've got several rockets in here. If you look at the idea of a rock in water, you could possibly pretty much easily go for Cape Canaveral. And if you want an actual dig spot, why not? Maybe these clouds is the rocket booster. Maybe it's plumes from a rocket booster taken off. If you like the Indian, well, the reason it's the Indian, because it's the Indian River. The reason there's animals in here is because they turned that particular location from a place for animals to a place for space exploration. If you couple this image with the back of the book, you end up getting a solve around Cape Canaveral. Nobody's explained why in the next image there's lavender in the background. Nobody's explained why it goes from red, the checkerboard square, to lavender. Nobody's explained the coffee bag or the sleeve or the arm being lavender. Explain the color lavender to me and how it relates to New Orleans. Just one person come forward and explain this to me. One person. Explain how this lavender color has to do anything. Oh, explain to me why Louis Armstrong is suddenly a Down syndrome child. Explain that to me. Explain to me why the fingers are Down syndrome related. Please explain those fingers to me. Why they're in that shape. Why they look that way. Explain to me why there's a horse over here on the side. Explain why the reference to preservation. Preservation Hall? I'm sorry, that guy that's hanging and dangling from the hoop like he's in a swing or maybe he's falling off the arch. That doesn't explain anything. The two arrows and preservation at the top describes perfectly what was going on at the arch in St. Louis. The Limp family is what you have to go to for this one. At Stonewall's door, the air smells sweet. That simply is describing the fact that the Lavender Lady in St. Louis used to have paintings made with perfume, and so the at the door to that stone house, it still smells sweet because she used to uh, put fragrance in the paint, or she had the artist do that. The Houston one, how racist are you people? Because you're going to say just because this guy looks like he's wearing a hijab, he's got to be. This got to be about immigration from a certain part. I've just given you an alternative Michigan solve for the one that people think is in um, Canada. But for you people that like Canada, tell the one thing I want the people who believe that this image is in Montreal is explain the history of pizza making and explain why there's a pizza in there between the fingers. Explain that to me. And the rebus, the people that don't believe some of the solve ideas I put out, explain why the primrose and the two seer stones and the bird in the hand are not explained in your rebus. You guys lied your ass off about Boston. Sorry, Boston Pops. You explained 3 elements in this entire image. And I pointed out in my last show over 50 different elements that are in this image. And in the final image, nobody's explained why that carrot or torpedo is part of the bird and what those droplets are. Other things that bother me is on page 55, we're looking at Mrs. Butterworth's bottle. Not sure why we've got a Mrs. Butterworth's here. So I don't know why they chose specific stories to highlight here. And I don't know if there's a one-for-one relationship between the pictures and the stories that they chose to be most important. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pictures on the guide to the fair people. And I'm trying to figure out why they chose those. The Mater Demon, I've explained a lot of elements in this one. I pretty much went through the back of the book. So I guess I'm just going to stop at this point because I kind of went through the back of the book and tell me who some of these people are. Like on page 65, who are the people in the pool? There are some people who have said that they know where this one picture on page 67 was taken. Explain who the people are in page 69 and reference it to a particular puzzle. Do the same thing for the Screaming Mimi. Reference it to a specific puzzle. The joke theme, reference that to a specific puzzle. House Unfamiliarist, I can just keep going and going and going. But it's pointless because most of the people don't want to explain why there's a guy on page 119 in a Farrar drawing with some stockings at the bottom and there's a garrote around the neck. Nobody wants to explain why there's women's stockings at the bottom and then there's a garrote around the neck. Nobody wants to explain the black guy that ran into the Drano. Well, Drano has to do with Cleveland because that's where Harry Drackett was born. But nobody goes through the back of the book and looks up the names and tries to link them to a puzzle. And I've done that. I've done that with Drano, who made Drano, a lot of this stuff. The guy, the Paltry Geist, pretty sure that's the guy that, because of the part and the hair, I'm pretty sure the Paltry Geist now goes with the Michigan puzzle because there's a wire in there and it came in at about the same time. I don't know what the words on that pillow say, but a lot of unexplained things in the back of the book. Checkerboard table with a Tupperware container on it next to a So in the 137 illustration by John Jude Palancar, see the missile? Do you see the missile in on page 137 in the ketchup bottle? Does it look? Does that missile there kind of look like the 8, or is it just a penis? I'm not talking about the cap, by the way, which is again the cap is again another one. But where is it? And then on the mustard bottle, look at the things on the mustard bottle. Um, the fact that there's a lot of windows in these images also has been a little bit of an unexplained phenomenon to me. What does the window have to do with anything? Unless there's a lighthouse maybe involved. Um, the jagged appearance on page 151. Why is there a jagged appearance? Is that? Oh, I get it. That's the Shakers. That's the Shakers. So maybe this has to do with Cleveland a little bit. Why are the windows got? Why do they have snow in the corner of them? All of them. Why is it that Muhammad Ali had a relationship with Carol and was involved in the Rumble in the Jungle? And the Florida bombman. Oh, the Florida bomb man. Maybe I've got it. Let's look at Muhammad Ali. Maybe he's in the book. Oh, Muhammad Ali. There's another medical reference. Okay, this could be good. Let's see. Because I had a note on this about bombing. So he was actually named Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. Oh, he was born in Louisville. Louisville. Maybe he's the guy that's got the 13th. His father was a sign and billboard painter. I like that. His mother, Odessa O'Grady Clay. Oh, maybe Gopher does have a little bit to do with this from the Love Boat. She was a domestic helper. Or his younger brother was Rudy. Oh, he was dyslexic as well. We found another dyslexic, just like the Rockefellers who were dyslexic. He couldn't get a drink of water. Maybe this is why some of these have images of water being poured. Oh, he got involved in the. Oh, he used to say, nothing would ever shake me up more than the story of Emmett Till. Again, this was somebody that was abducted, or somebody was abducted. Anyway, his coach was Joe Martin. Had some early career. Patterson. He resisted the draft. The NSA followed him around. The super fight. He fought Rocky Marciano. One of his quotes was that the computer was made in Alabama. when he I guess anyway, that's one of his quotes. Joe Frazier. He had a fight against Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier. Jimmy Ellis. He was a childhood friend of from Louisville. Second, the Rumble in the Jungle. It was from Zaire. Well, this was a big thing, folks. I remember this growing up. He told interviewer David Frost. Remember, David Frost was mentioned specifically by name in the Jack the Nimbus article. Thank you very much. And he told David Frost, if you think the world is surprised when Nixon resigned, wait till I whip Foreman's behind. Oh. He told the press, I've done something new for this fight. I've done wrestled with an alligator. I've done tussled with a whale. Handcuffed lightning, thrown thunder in jail, and only last week I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean I make medicine sick. It was a major upset after Ali came in as a 4-1 underdog against Foreman. And at the time, the audience was 1 billion viewers. It was the most watched live television broadcast at the time. So I like the fact that we went to the Thrilla in Manila. In February of '78, Ali faced Leon Spinks at the Hilton Hotel in Las Vegas. A rematch occurred at the Superdome in New Orleans. He had a fight stopped against Larry Holmes. That was the only time he'd ever lost by stoppage. In '76, he participated in an exhibition bout in Tokyo against a professional wrestler, Antonio Inoki. Ali was only able to land 2 jabs, while Inoki kicks caused 2 blood clots and an infection that almost resulted in Ali's leg being amputated. As a result of Ali's team insisting on rules restriction, it was declared a draw. Yeah, I never saw that fight. He fought in '79 in an exhibition match against Lyle Alzado. Now I do remember that name. He was on the Raiders, I think. And then well, I had a note in here about a Florida fire. I don't know where that happened. He did do some spoken word music and rap. He got involved in professional wrestling, which a lot of that was coming out at the time. He attended a match featuring Gorilla Monsoon, and he confronted the Gorilla. Well, this is fun. After dodging a few punches, Monsoon put Ali in an airplane spin and dumped him on the mat. Ali stumbled to the corner where his associate Butch Lewis convinced him to walk away from the fight. Uh, And on January 19th of 1981 in LA, LA topped a suicidal mound down from jumping off the ninth floor ledge, an event that made national news. There's some conversation in here about the 76 Olympics. I don't know why I had a note in here about Ali and a Florida fire. Uh, Florida bomb man. It is the abominable snow munchkin's practice to skulk upon snowy inclines when a human being passes below. The munchkin twitches a tiny lever, dumping an ice load upon the victim. Often the occasion of a good-natured seasonal hilarity, these tricks are sometimes fatal, as when several hundred pounds of ice and slush are unleashed from the roof of a ski resort A-frame. I'm sure that happened to somebody in the back of the book. In the Northwest, they say Jack the Nimbus comes from England. Yeah, I'm not sure why I had that. From the Hurricane Harry trailer parks of the Keys to Twister tormented Texas trails. So that's where we find him. He's a dust devil. Uh, he's Johnny Chinook. In Florida, Jack Frost. In California, David Frost. Well, like I said, David Frost had two memorable interviews in his life, and one of them is uh, Nixon, and the other one was the Weatherman. Okay, the Weatherman bombings in 1975 happened in Washington D.C. and Oakland, and the Weatherman was founded at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Congratulations, Michigan! You're mentioned in the back of the book under the Weatherman. You were mentioned in the back of the book under the Weatherman section. Congratulations, Michigan! You're on the map again. The best advice is to look up. All right, I think I'm about done. Uh, there's still a lot more things at the back of the book that nobody's explained. Okay, Jeff, glad you hung out this long. I'm going to drop her off. Uh, I hate red herrings and hunts, but maybe Palancar included the clues he was instructed to paint, and then the rest was his random images. Well, I don't think so. I think I think that he was young. Byron was a little bit older than he was. The writers that were involved in that project, he was just a college graduate, just gotten out of college. Uh, he slept a few times on Preiss's couch. Um, the rest of the crew was a little bit older, but he had a fabulous talent and I don't ever knock Palancar's talent for drawing images. I just I think he was taken advantage of a little bit by uh, Byron because of his absolute talent and ability to paint. And you know, I just think he was maybe slightly uh, too interested in what National Lampoon had been doing in the 1970s and what the Harvard Lampoon had done before that. And he was excited by the action of being on the leading edge of putting together a book where he was getting paid to draw pictures, and the money was good coming in. He probably had college bills to pay, and I think he was excited about the project. I don't think you can draw what he drew in these images without having discussed formally a little bit what this was about. I don't think Joellen Trilling could make these images or these dolls with the facial expressions and images unless she had a pretty good idea where this was going. Uh, did the National Lampoon writers give all the information of what they were going to write to the artist and to the photographer and to the sculptress? I don't think so. But I'm fairly confident that National Lampoon was already doing things with Volkswagen Beetles on stuff. The Chappaquiddick thing had already been made fun of. I've showed from the show that the two people in the image with Bowman and it might be just coincidence that that lady's name is Bowman, and it might just be coincidence that I had a solve that I thought was at Florida State because I was trying to make something work with that kind of thinking. I will admit, maybe I was trying to force my solve to Salt Lake City and because of certain facts that seem to make sense. But if you innocuously tell somebody to draw an image with pantyhose and draw an image with the scarf around the neck, and they don't know that that's the mode of operandi of the Michigan murderer, they don't know what they're drawing. They just think that they're drawing a cute little figure with something tied around their neck that happens to have some pantyhose at the bottom. When Byron told Ben Asen to produce a photograph of the doll that looked like Lucille Ball coming out of a washing machine, he probably didn't know that the artist actually had information about a laundry detergent, and they were going to write a story called The Scrububabus, and it was going to reference all kinds of things other than the washing machine and somebody coming out of it. Did Ben, when he took that picture, have any inclination that it was anything other than I just needed that doll and a washing machine? Probably not. Probably all he was told. Joellen Trilling, she was probably told, I need a doll that looks like James Beard. I need a doll that looks like um, um, uh, I'm struggling here to give you the people, but James Beard, the one that looks like Julia Child, the one that looks like Arthur Fiedler, all of them. I'm pretty sure she was given a picture of the likeness of the person that she was supposed to make a doll for, and that was it. I think the culpability. I think the culpability of Joanne is pretty small because she just, it's an innocent little thing like, well, could you make that doll look a little bit more like um, Julia Child? Could you make that doll look a little bit more like the hotel heiress? What's her name? And from that, could Joellen Trilling have an idea of where these things are secreted because of the people that she made caricatures of? Absolutely. Absolutely. She could maybe have a little bit more of that. Perard. It seems like Perard may have had enough information to put together 3 or 4 things that need to be in an image. Because I'm looking at like this banana thing, and it's like, well, that's a very nice rendering of the space shuttle. Could you add a plant at the bottom that has a banana in it or a bunch of bananas? Because it needs to be in that image. And he probably said, "Sure, how does this look?" And so he brought it back, and then he probably said, "Hey, I need to have some unemployed engineers in here. Uh, that you need to maybe put them over here in this section." Uh, and then he probably said, "I need to have like an island. This needs to look like I need to have some grass growing in it." And he sent the guy off to improve his work. Palancar's the same way. I'm pretty sure the methodology that they're showing you is that in the 13th, they've now released this quote unquote sketch that was available before, right? They probably had sketched out in an early production meeting what they wanted on in a sketch and where the things were going to be in the image. Like they drew like a kind of a lion thing here, and there needs to be a girl over here, and she needs to be black, and then the same instructions were given to Perard. So if you go to the back of the book and you look at the Perard drawing, here's what Byron probably told Perard to do. On the page 209, he probably told Perard, he said, "Hey, I got a picture of this girl, and I like the way she looks. Could you take that picture, put glasses on her, and then put her in like a blouse and put a charm around her neck, and then have her make a ringing motion to her shirt as if she's pulling it up. And then behind that, could you put in a picture frame, like another hairstyle, like for a black person, and then have that be right behind that image? Could you then at the bottom put a steel desk, like is manufactured in Celeron, and somebody with a wind-up key sitting on a chair with a hole in his head, smoking a pipe. But I don't want it to be a corn cob pipe because that's not my theme. It's just got to be a pipe making smoke. And then I need to have glasses on that figure, and I need to have his hair designed in a certain way with a part on the back." And he said, then you can put this in like any kind of office, but in the background, I need basically a doctor looking at a woman standing in front of another woman with a dark hair. So one with blonde, one with dark. And oh, by the way, here's a copy of National Lampoon magazine. Could you make something like that with a doctor in it sitting at the desk? And so he goes off, and then he comes back, and well, that's good for the background because you put a guy swinging a golf club, looking out into the distance in front of here, holding a whistle or a key or a bowling pin with a circle on the top of it, and wearing a belt with the money on it, and have the bottom have a tie clip, and to the side have a stylistic symbol of medicine sticking out. Sure, I can do all that for you. All right, bring that back to me in a week, and we'll look at it. And he comes back, and all the time the writers in Byron know that they're going to put a story out about a woman and a doctor, and it gets developed that way. Similarly, 195. So he sends Palancar out to draw some. I need you to put some animals like in an image over here. I'm like part of the image. I want you to put like deer and squirrels and birds and stuff, and then I want you to put over here on the other side like plumes of smoke, things like that. And they just sent these people out to draw this stuff. And I imagine there was so much back and forth between the artists and their conceptions and the final products that it just, they had to go back and forth in some of this stuff in order to get it right. Because there's too much overlap between, like, the image where you've got Helmsley, and on top of her hat, she's got the Empire State Building. I had to be Well, and that woman looks just like Leona Helmsley. I'm sure somebody in that production meeting got a picture of Leona Helmsley. Um, I haven't for sure figured out who the nymphomane is. Um, so any help with that one would be great. I'm sure there's something going on in the background, but those rocks look like lips. Uh, there's some black rocks out in California, but I also think that there was some photoshopping going on by in the dark room by the guy that took these pictures to add a few details, like the Kaiser image. The Kaiser doesn't look exactly like that on the front of the car. It's slightly different. Uh, but in the palette card drawing with the checkerboard table, um, it's like, hey, could you put like a moon in the background and then a window? Put me a mustard container and a ketchup container and a Tupperware bowl on that table with, some mushroom and garlic or onions and mushrooms. And Palancar puts it together, and the next meeting is like, okay, well the lid's got to be open, and there's got to be a couple eyes looking out of it, and then on that ketchup bottle, we need to put a penis or a spire or a rocket on it of some sort, and then we need to stylistically make that uh, um, top of the ketchup bottle a certain way. And I think with these tiny improvements and changes to these images over time, they got to be the story that Byron wanted to tell. Uh, so the razor wire, uh, go away. Uh, but it's disturbing to see this one guy pulling on the pantyhose on page 128 when you know that there's a story about a guy that used to tear off pantyhose and do something with them. So anyway, well, that's just about going to end my uh, deep dive into the secret puzzles. Gonna get away from the ideas that were presented in these. Uh, Maybe tomorrow I'll go through the secret tribute puzzle and give you a complete solve for the secret tribute puzzle, because I haven't done that in over a year, where I can explain all the elements and give you. I don't think I'll do this for the sketch. I could do it for the sketch too, if you'd like, but I haven't looked at the sketch enough to really do much with it. But I have a pretty extensive analysis of the tribute. I've actually got some videos you can watch where I've been boots on the ground for that. And maybe tomorrow will be the tribute puzzle day. And then I will completely went through everything. Um, so thanks so much for joining in. Good night, Jeff. Going to go watch Dave Woodard's video on see what he's saying again. It's going to be the same thing he said for a long time, and that's why I really don't feel compelled to pay attention to Forrest Fenn. I mean, I got suckered into K-Pro's show last night because she's saying that Jack can now come forward, and again, this is all, in my opinion, part of a contrived ending that's been put together. Reason why unknown, but I don't know. It gets disturbing when I start thinking about the number of people that died in Forrest Fenn's treasure hunt. It really disturbs me. And I guess I'm not going to say it on this venue, but Preiss, early 30s. Yeah, when he did this, yes, I think so. And Palancar's right out of college. He's like 10 years older than Palancar when this was put together. I did a video on this a year ago on the age of all the actors involved. Uh, it's in my library of the Secret Solve shows. I did a video on everything I could find out about all the authors. And I'm telling you, I can't find out anything about Overton Lloyd. And I can't figure out what his contribution was to this. Oh, does Sandy Duncan have a glass eye too? I didn't know that. That's interesting. Well, she could be in here somewhere. I've actually thought of Sandy Duncan. I'm glad you're close enough to my age, Jeff, that you can actually look at these images and see who the people are. The problem is most of the people that's looking at this book can't go to, you know, uh, these two pages and say, is that Mr. Green Jeans over there? And is that Fiedler down there? They have no clue. And I'm still a little off on them. John Belushi, they can't recognize a John Belushi when they see him. They can't recognize a Lucy Ball when they see him. But, I mean, the easiest ones to recognize are James Beard and Julia Child. I think this guy is Gene Shalit. Do you agree, Jeff? Do you think that's Gene Shalit, the entertainment reporter? And is this Brooke Shields? So, are you old enough to remember there was a program on last night about Brooke Shields? So, are you old enough to remember when Blue Lagoon came out and Brooke Shields was in it? And the whole story of Blue Lagoon was basically these two cousins get marooned on an island and they're 13 and 14 years old. And by the end of the movie, they're taking their clothes off and they're getting together with each other. Brooke Shields is, playing a role way beyond her age. And I don't know if you remember the movie Blue Lagoon, but it was a sensation. Everybody talked about it. The 80s were weird. The 70s, growing up, they're going from the 70s to the 80s. The shift from being Protestant, Anglo-Saxon, Catholic, Jewish, religious, to being a completely agnostic, atheistic, money-driven, all for the one, not one for the all society, seemed to have came about somewhere after 1980. And I think it's the influence of television. I think it's the influence of television to a generation. And then that generation's turning their kids over to video games. And the whole entire breakdown of the family unit has led to people questioning whether, if they were born with a penis, that's who they and what they really are. Because they don't have any guidance as to what a man is, and what a woman is, and role models. And women will argue that the whole role model thing was to put them down. I make this argument for all women. The greatest achievement of a woman, if this is what she wants, is to be worshipped by her man. And, I don't think she needs to sacrifice herself or her career ideas or her thoughts. But back before the sexual revolution, a man had to work to get a woman. He had to put in the time and the effort to romance and wine and dine a woman. And if he couldn't achieve that, he usually had to go to a prostitute. because there weren't women in between prostitution and a wife. But starting in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that sanctity of that relationship, that marriage, seemed to break down at some point. And now it's, people don't want to get married. They delay getting married. And they see it as an obstacle to what they want to do and achieve, I think. But I'm the expert because I'm a single guy. I'm never married, and I'm almost 60 years old. And so, obviously I didn't do it right either. So the ultimate goal is to repopulate your DNA. When it comes down to it, if you don't replicate your DNA, your existence on this planet was nothing. And I failed in that one simple thing that I was put on the planet to do. Oh my. All right. I'm going to take care. See you later. Bye-bye.